We are now in open session, members, so again, welcome to all committee members to today's meeting. I'm going to start to proceed through the agenda. So agenda item number 1, which is apologies. Clerk, have we any apologies for anybody today?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, no apologies. Members are aware of any individual apologies? No? Okay. Next item of business, agenda item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Can I remind members that they're obliged to declare any relevant financial or other interest before taking part in the relevant committee proceedings? Do members have any interest to declare? None from the floor. Okay. Agenda item number 3, I refer members to draft minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of March 2024. They're at page 6 of your meeting pack. Are members content with the draft minutes? Members content? Yes? Yes. Okay, thank you, members. Just sign that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 4, which are matters arising. I have none. Agenda item number 5, which is the comparative research on the work of other institutional review committees, briefing by RAISE. So can I refer members to the research paper at page 14 of the pack, and advise members that the committee agreed at the meeting on the 20th of March to commission research to inform consideration of potential topics for the work programme. The research briefing will now be provided to members, and we can discuss subsequently under agenda item number 6. So can I welcome at this stage Ray McCaffrey, Assembly Research Officer. Ray, you're very welcome for the committee, and at this stage I'll give you the opportunity to brief the committee on the findings of the research paper.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So yes, the research looked at committees and other legislatures that have similar remits or address similar issues to that of the ARC. It builds on a previously published paper from a few years ago. My presentation is going to be fairly brief, so it just runs through the key findings from committees from the Welsh Parliament, Scottish Parliament, House of Commons, House of Lords and Dáil Éireann. And as we did previously in our last paper, we looked at legislatures further afield, such as the US Congress, but didn't necessarily find anything that would add value to this particular paper. So turning firstly to the Welsh Parliament, the Senate, the Special Purpose Committee on Senate Reform has undertaken some really interesting work over the last few years. It produced a report, Reforming Our Senate, a Stronger Voice for the People of Wales. And this largely formed the basis for the Senate Members and Elections Bill, which became law in May 2024. That bill implemented a number of proposals in the committee's report, including increasing the size of the Senate to 96 members, decreasing the length of time between Senate elections from 5 to 4 years, increasing the maximum number of deputy presiding officers from 1 to 2, and increasing the legislative limit on the size of the Welsh Government to 17 ministers, with potential to increase it further to 19 ministers. The Legislation, Justice and Constitution Committee of the Senate has a broad remit to consider matters relating to legislation, justice and the Constitution within or relating to the competence of the Senate or the Welsh ministers. And the paper includes examples of inquiries conducted by the committee over the last number of years, and these include its inquiry into UK-EU governance, common frameworks, Wales's role in the EU decision-making process, and inter-institutional relations agreement between the Senate and the Welsh Government. Moving on to the Scottish Parliament, Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee has recently published reports relating to aspects of electoral reform in Scotland, including the length of mandates for the Scottish Parliament and for local government. In July 2022, the committee published its report on future parliamentary practices, much of which was informed by the experiences of COVID-19. So that was really looking at, well, what are the practices we should keep on, maybe adapt, what are the ones we could drop. Like all legislatures, Scottish Parliament had to adapt to new ways of working due to COVID. So that addressed issues such as remote voting, electronic voting, proxy voting. Looking further back, but staying with Scotland, the Commission on Parliamentary Reform, which was established by the presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament, examined ways in which the Parliament could more effectively engage with citizens and improve its processes for delivering more effective scrutiny. So its very broad remit included looking at topics such as more effective committees, more effective use of chamber time, the Parliamentary Business Programme, and a greater variety in chamber business. And subsequently, in March 2019, the Presiding Officers Advisory Group published its report on how the Commission's recommendations had been delivered. Turning to the House of Commons, the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee in November of last year published its report on the effectiveness of the institutions of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And really the purpose of the inquiry aimed to allow the design and operation of the agreement's institutions to be examined in a fair and objective light. I'm sure members are familiar with the committee's work, but just a sample of its recommendations are set out in the paper, and they include amending the Northern Ireland Act 1998 so that the Speaker is elected by MLAs on a supermajority basis of 2/3, renaming the titles of First Minister and Deputy First Minister to Joint First Ministers, amending the NI Act 1998 so that the Joint First Ministers are elected by the Assembly on a supermajority basis of 2/3. And it also recommended an evaluation of how the present system of executive formation might be reformed to increase coalition cohesiveness while maintaining cross-community representation. And staying with the Commons, the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee has a remit to examine, among other things, constitutional issues and the quality and standards provided by civil service departments. And again, just a few examples of its ongoing and recently completed inquiries include devolution capability in Whitehall, civil service leadership and reform, and the role of the Prime Minister's office. And members, just quickly touching on the House of Lords Constitution Committee, and again it examines all public bills for constitutional implications and also investigates wider constitutional issues. And again, just some examples of ongoing and recently completed work includes the governance of the Union, consultation, cooperation and legislative consent, voter ID and future governance of the UK, as well as it examined the legislative process, the passage of bills through Parliament. Finally, members, just turning to Dáil Éireann, Committee on Standing Orders and Dáil Reform really operates as both a sort of procedure committee as well as a broader reform committee. Some of its recent work includes, and actual recommendations includes the addition of 2 minutes for non-aligned members to fixed time debates and private members' business, amendment of standing orders relating to pre-legislative scrutiny of government bills, and amendments to standing orders relating to remote participation in committee meetings. Going slightly further back, the subcommittee on Dáil Reform, it actually had quite an interesting work programme that looked at how the role of the Dáil could be strengthened. Dáil had sort of traditionally been viewed as a weaker legislature in relation to the strength of the government, so commitments had been given by successive governing parties to address this. So the Committee on Dáil Reform examined this and made a number of recommendations, which included more power for Parliament to make arrangements for its own business with the establishment of a business committee, better scrutiny of the annual budgetary cycle by a new budget oversight committee, and a rearrangement of the sitting day so that, insofar as possible, plenary and committee meetings do not clash. So members, that's just an overview of what was a fairly brief paper. I hope it gives the committee some food for thought in terms of potential issues that it could seek to address. And just to clarify, I suppose there's no direct comparator between other committees in this committee for obvious reasons, but broadly speaking, sort of procedure committees and wider reform committees would undertake the role that this committee would undertake in other legislatures.
No, thank you for that, Ray. That's very interesting, and we appreciate the work that has went into that. And you alluded to the point, but the powers of these committees are very different in terms of the unique structures that are set up here for very obvious reasons. So those recommendations that come through from those other committees, what is their statutory obligation to report rather to bring forward the actual potential legislation? I'm thinking about the House of Commons committee, for example, the NI First committee, quite a far-reaching report, which obviously in and of themselves they can't change given the complexities of the Northern Ireland system. Have you any clarity on, whenever it comes to power of physical change, which committee ranks, sort of how they rank in comparison to different legislatures?
Well, the House of Commons, the government responded to that and said, very interesting work, but it's really for local representatives to take forward any change. In terms of sort of procedure committee, so the subcommittee on Dáil reform, you can look and see where a business committee has been established and their recommendations have been implemented. I suppose there are different levels. You look at the Commission on Parliamentary Reform in Scotland, that reported to the Presiding Officers Advisory Group, and it's up to them to take forward. But by and large, it's recommendations or here's things that we would like to see, but it's not necessarily up for those committees to implement them.
From your observations, how is the discourse among members on those particular committees? So I'm very conscious here that particularly with some of the major sweeping types of reforms that the NI Affairs Committee, for example, there was obviously dissenting opinion. You know, obviously the function of this committee is statutory duty to report. How is that dissenting opinion reflected, and particularly is there an account given across these different legislatures that when it comes to some of the more serious aspects of reform, that a majority view, if not a unanimous view, is always better when it comes to the actual then implementation of some of the proposed reforms?
That's probably a difficult one to answer without looking in further detail, Chair. I suppose most committees operate on the basis of unanimity. The less controversial ones, such as establishing a business committee and what have you, are sort of perhaps more run-of-the-mill technical procedural issues. But the ones, for example, on broader reform, for example in Wales, will generate debate. But now to what extent there's dissenting opinions within those committees, I'd probably rather go away and look at it in more detail, Chair, than give you an
Just
answer.
think it would probably be a very obvious point that particular proposals of reform, given the large long list that members get generated as to what members want to see in particular parties or executive or wherever, that it's probably most likely that those that have unanimous support are the ones that ultimately, you know, become the real change blazers for the respective parliaments. That's probably an observation, but it probably does happen in theory like that.
Yes, you are probably right,
Yeah.
Chair. Yeah.
Okay. Any members, any particular questions on the briefing? No? Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, just I'm new to the committee, so I'm sorry if this is something you already know. We have this committee, but we also seem to have the chairperson's liaison group and the procedures committee. Do those other committees and the other jurisdictions have similar other groups that they intersect with, or are we a bit more kind of divided up, subdivided?
No, they will do, and that for those inquiries, they'll probably seek, views of other relevant committees within their particular legislatures. So, yes, as there's no ARC direct equivalent, but there are procedure committees, there are special reform committees that will be set up for a certain period of time and then dissolved once they've done their work. But yes, they will absolutely liaise and seek the views of other committees as and when it's necessary.
And ultimately, do just recommendations from those groups then go to the main, legislator, or we would go to the Assembly or one of the other committees to then take it forward, or we just make recommendations from this group?
Yeah, so if it's a procedure committee and they want to amend standing orders, that will ultimately go to the wider House, the wider legislature. But for example, the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, they're making recommendations, but it would really be up for other people to take the government, or as the government said, their preference would be probably this institution to be more involved in those discussions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that obviously this first standing order change requires that cross-community voting anyway, so it's that inbuilt protection. The primary focus of the committee is to report, and then it's up to the wider sort of party political system here as to what is achievable. Okay, any other member, any particular questions on the report? Okay, thank you, and very welcome, Matthew. We move on then to that. So just thank you very much, Ray, for your questions. We may probably at some stage require your expertise again at some stage, so thank you at this stage.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, members, agenda item number 6, which is the suggested topics for the AARC work programme. Can I refer members to the following? A secretariat briefing at page 26 of the pack, a table of suggested topics at 28, the legacy report from the previous committee at page 32, and stakeholder responses at page 52. At this stage, I will invite the clerk Shane to brief the committee.
Okay, Chair. So page 26 of the pack there's a Secretariat paper just introducing this agenda item. So members will recall that at the last meeting on the 20th of March, the committee agreed to take a number of steps which really follow the approach that previous ARC committees have taken in terms of identifying potential topics for the committee work programme. So that included writing to FMD and DFM to see if to ask for a meeting and to discuss any suggested topics that the executive may have. Also writing to all the assembly parties and independent members seeking suggestions and commissioning the research that the committee has heard this morning, and also considering any separate developments which might arise in the meantime. So there was a deadline of the 10th of May given to the parties to respond, and then that was extended to the 10th of June and then again to the 9th of September. So the responses to date are included in the pack, and there's a table at page 28 of the pack which just summarises the responses and sets them into 3 different categories. The committee also wrote to the Procedures Committee and the Chairperson's Liaison Group, because there is an potential overlap between this committee and the Procedures Committee in terms of the function. So this committee's function it's actually, as the research pointed out this morning, has fulfilled its statutory functions, but there's a residual function in standing orders in terms of considering and examining the functioning of the Assembly and the Executive, and reporting to the Assembly. Whereas the Procedures Committee's role is to review standing orders, so there can be a bit of overlap there. So the committee wrote to this Procedures Committee as well for views, and those are set out. You'll see at page 28 there were a number of suggestions from the last committee in its legacy report. So items 1 to 4 are from the legacy report of the last committee, and then the responses received are items 5 to 11 in the table. And then there's some separate developments, the issues identified in this morning's research paper, and there's also a potential topic arising from the Assembly Commission's corporate strategy in terms of oversight of the Assembly's participation in international and interparliamentary bodies. So they are the topics collated to date, Chair. So there's some potential action points for the committee on the right hand column in terms of does it want to ask the executive side for specific suggestions before a meeting between the chair and deputy chair and the FMDFM. Last time I recall in the last mandate the executive provided about 20 topic suggestions at the time. Now some of those were outside the remit of the committee, but in the end the committee had about 35 potential topics. And there's also some research on some of those other topics could be undertaken to inform the committee's consideration and selection and prioritisation of the topics, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And at this stage, have members any questions of the clerk in relation to the briefing paper? No. Okay. Well, look, members, I suppose probably it's been summed up there. We're now in the stage now where we're still trying to gather in the potential topics before we would go through a period of siphoning as to what's going to be the focus for the committee in its remainder of the term. Obviously, not every issue can be taken forward or will be, but it's important that we prioritise as a committee. So just ask members if there is any additional topics that they would like to see added to the list. Members are content? Okay. Well, at this point, I would like to just seek agreement for members to write to the Executive Office to request suggestions on work topics for the wider Executive. Are members happy with that action point? Yep. Yes. Can I also seek agreement that the Secretariat then collates all potential topics into a long list and seeks additional research or information on individual topics on the list as applicable in order to form committee decisions on selection and prioritisation? Members happy with that action point? Okay. Could I advise members that the finalised list of topics and any additional research will be considered at a future meeting when decisions can be made on the selection and prioritisation of topics for the work programme until the end of the mandate? Are members content with those proposed points of action? Yeah. Agreed. Okay, members, thank you. We now move to agenda item number 7, which is the correspondence. Could I refer members to the correspondence table at page 60 of your meeting pack? Could I draw members' attention to the correspondence at page 65 from the Procedures Committee seeking suggestions on potential topics for its work programme? And can I ask if members are content or have any suggestions for the Procedure Committee that they can note at this stage? I know we all have representation on that respective committee, so I'm pretty sure they're being very courteous in asking the committee, but I have no doubt that those issues will have been raised repeatedly. Any member, Matthew?
Chair, apologies. I just wanted to go back to the previous, if I could seek your indulgence just to go back to the previous item to clarify one point.
Yes, sorry.
On the suggested work areas. I had suggested via email the topic suggested in the legacy report for the remainder of the mandate. It says that our party representative had clarified that our representative would indicate our strategic proposal going forward. Just to put on the record that ours has been, because I can't find it on the on the specific. Our return has been that we're keen to focus on the question of reform, specifically relating to First and Deputy First Minister and veto and ability to collapse. So I just want to put that on the record.
I suppose probably as indicated on the action points,
Yeah.
Members still have an opportunity to add to that list. So whatever is submitted will be compiled in the final list then for members to prioritise.
Okay.
Content with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
I just check for this item, we can go back to them another time after we have our discussions around our list. If we feel there's something emerges from that to go to procedures, we can raise it
Yes.
there on.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, okay, so just that's knocked me off a wee bit here, but where do we see where we were? So yes, correspondence, so Procedures Committee. So members don't have any suggestions at this stage, may do in the future. Can I ask members if they're content to action the remaining correspondence as suggested in the correspondence table? Members content? Okay. Agenda item number 8, which is any other business. I have none. Only to reiterate what was said earlier as to if members have any additional topics, those can be compiled to the list, and then we'll go through a period of sifting through that list. Okay. That leads then to agenda item number 9, which is date, time and place of next meeting. Can I inform members that the next committee meeting is scheduled for the 5th of November, but this is dependent on receiving the commissioned research and responses from the Executive Office. Subsequent meeting is scheduled for the Tuesday the 3rd of December, which may be a more realistic timescale. Members are therefore be advised of the date and time for our next meeting. And members, I do think the format at this stage in particular of a Tuesday morning does suit members, that they're able then to go about other committee business later in the week as we will watch how the work programme develops over time. Okay? Thank you, members, and at this point could I adjourn the meeting?
Committee Room 21. Sound.